Hello, I'm Jace. I'm 27 years old and live in a small town in Washington State, about an hour outside Seattle. It's not exactly the kind of place people write songs about, but it's quiet, and that works for me. I've been a sales manager at a local Ford dealership for the past 3 years. The pay is decent, my coworkers are okay, and I live in an apartment above a hardware store, what I jokingly call my alley view. Not exactly glamorous. I'm not the type to go searching for love, especially not on a weekday morning before work. But that day felt different. It was a cold October morning, one of those where you could see your breath, but the sun's shining like it doesn't notice. It was freezing. I left my apartment a bit earlier than usual for no particular reason, just to clear my head. Work had been dragging lately, and life felt stale. I stopped by a small cafe across from the dealership, Bean and Hollow. Locals love the place. Their lattes are overpriced, but effective. I ordered a caramel latte and waited off to the side. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting alone at the bar, near the window. Dark hair, shoulder length, neatly parted, wearing a black sweater with sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal a slim silver bracelet. She had a laptop open and was typing like she was handling a crisis, but not stressed. Calm, confident, like she owned the morning. I wasn't staring. Well, maybe I was, I'm not sure. And she looked up and caught me mid-glance. "Looks like your latte stood you up," she said with a small smirk. I blinked, then laughed. "Yeah, I guess it ghosted me," I replied. She chuckled softly and went back to typing. I moved a little closer. "Not sure how you stay this sharp before 8 a.m., I said. She glanced at me again, this time with a broader smile. "Depends on who's standing next to me." That hit me in a good way. I smiled back and nodded. "I'm Jace, by the way." She didn't say her name, just closed her laptop and said, "Nice to meet you, Jace." Then the barista called out her name, Mira. She grabbed her coffee, slid a $20 bill under her cup, and headed toward the door. Before leaving, she paused, looked back at me, pulled a pen from her bag, and wrote something on a napkin. "If your latte ever shows up, tell I beat it to the punch," she said, handing me the napkin. Then she walked out. I looked down at the napkin, her number, with Mira, underlined once. I stood there, half stunned, half amused, completely thrown off. This kind of thing doesn't happen to me. I'm not that guy. I'm a guy who talks about interest rates and lease options, not the guy women write their number on napkins for. I took my coffee and walked out, still looking at the number. Something about her stayed in my mind the whole day. The calm confidence, the way she didn't explain herself, the smirk, the silver bracelet. I didn't text her that day. I wasn't sure what to say. I kept thinking she was probably just being nice or messing around or married. But that night when I got home, I pulled out the napkin again. Mirror, clean handwriting. The kind of script someone uses when they're used to making quick decisions or when they don't expect hesitation. So I typed, "Hey Mara, it's Jace, the ghosted latte guy. Thanks for the save." Then I stared at the message for 5 full minutes and sent it. I didn't expect a reply, but 10 minutes later, she wrote back, "Guess you're not a morning person either." Coffee round 2. We met the following Friday. She picked the place, a wine bar just outside downtown. Classy, but not pretentious. Dim lighting, wooden tables, subtle jazz playlist that nobody was really listening to. It wasn't the kind of spot I usually went to. I'm more of a burger and beer guy. But I shaved, put on a button-down, even more cologne I hadn't touched in months. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, swirling a glass of red. She looked sharp. Same black hair, this time pulled back loosely. A white blouse under a soft gray jacket. No flashy jewelry, just the silver bracelet again. Still that same calm, centered energy. "Hey," I said as I walked up. She looked up, and for a second something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Approval? Maybe. "You're not late," she said. That's already a good sign. I smiled and slid into the seat across from her. "And you're drinking wine without me. That's a red flag." She smirked. "Technically, this is a blend." I laughed. She already had the upper hand, and I was okay with that. We talk a lot. Turns out she's a financial consultant. Works remotely for a firm in Portland. Widowed 4 years ago. No kids. She mentioned it lightly, like a fact, not a tragedy. I didn't pry. I told her about the dealership, about the weird customers, the stressful quotas, the coworker who can't stop saying my guy in every sentence. She laughed at that harder than I expected. She had this way of listening, not just waiting for her turn to speak, actually listening, nodding when she agreed, raising an eyebrow when she didn't. And when she smiled, it wasn't wide or dramatic. It was small, but it landed. By the time the waiter brought the second glass, we were leaning forward, both elbows on the table. It wasn't romantic yet, but something was building. Eventually, the conversation shifted. I don't remember how we got there, but we started talking about ages, not ours, just in general. The age when people settle down or figure things out. She rolled her eyes at the idea of milestones being attached to numbers. I feel younger now than I did at 30, she said, sipping her wine. Must be nice, I said. At 30, I'll probably be fully bald. She looked at me for a moment, then said, How old do you think I am? It caught me off guard. I hesitated. 32. She laughed genuinely this time, like head tilted back kind of laugh. Nice try, she said, shaking her head, then calmly. I'm 44. I blinked. Seriously? She nodded. I let out a slow breath, mostly to buy time, then grinned. Too bad you're not 25, I joked. It was a pause. Not long, maybe 2 seconds, but everything hung in it. Then she leaned forward slightly and said, Then let's pretend I am. She didn't wink, didn't smirk, just looked straight at me, level, quiet, unapologetic. I froze. Not because I didn't like it, but because I did. Way more than I expected. All right, I said slowly. But if we're pretending, then I'm a neurosurgeon with a house in the Hamptons. She smiled. I've always had a thing for neurosurgeons. We kept talking, but the mood had shifted. Still light, but with a deeper undercurrent. Something that wasn't there when the night started. Eventually, the check came. I reached for it, and she didn't argue, didn't offer to split, just said thank you softly as she picked up her coat. Outside, the air was colder than before. She hugged her arms around herself, and I offered her my jacket half as a joke. She didn't take it. At her car, she turned to me. Tonight was fun. Yeah, I said. It really was. She unlocked the door, but didn't get in yet. Looked at me searching for something. I wasn't sure what. Don't overthink it, Jace. She said finally, I won't. Elite. She got in and drove away. I stood there for a second watching her tail lights disappear. On the way home, I kept replaying that moment. Then, let's pretend I am. I knew it was just a line, just something she said in the moment. But the thing is, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like an invitation. We didn't make any big plans after that night. No dramatic texts, no promises, just a casual let me know if you ever want to do that again. And she did. 2 days later, we met for dinner again. Then lunch that weekend. Then she stopped by the dealership on a random Wednesday just to see what it looked like when I talked someone into a terrible lease. Her words, not mine. It wasn't intense. It wasn't rushed, but it was something. We were careful, though. I hadn't told anyone about Mira. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not because I was embarrassed. I just didn't know what it was yet. And I definitely didn't want to invite opinions too early. She was even more private. She'd pick restaurants a little further out of town. She made sure no one from her yoga group saw us. Always parked a block away from wherever we met. At first, I thought she was being overly cautious. Then, I started to understand. One night, we met at a small Italian place near the lake. Dim lighting, 2 tables occupied, quiet. We sat in the back corner. When we walked in, she instinctively looked around before sitting down like she was scanning for someone. Expecting paparazzi, I joked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Old habit. Later that evening, I found out why. We were finishing dessert, tiramisu, and sipping on espresso. Mira looked tired. Not physically, but mentally. Her eyes were somewhere else. You okay? Hey, I asked. She nodded, then hesitated. Can I tell you something a little frustrating? Sure. My friend Amy saw us last week at the wine bar. Oh. She waited 2 days to say anything, then called me to ask if I was doing okay. Said I was glowing, which in her tone meant I must be losing my mind. I laughed. She's jealous. Mira shook her head. She's concerned that I'm, spiraling, having a moment. Like, just because I'm dating someone younger, I must be in crisis. You're not, I said firmly. She looked at me. You don't feel weird about it. About this, I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to lie. Truth was, I hadn't processed everything yet. We were clearly clicking. I liked being around her. She challenged me, but didn't try to fix me. It was calm and exciting at the same time. But yeah, the age gap. It was in the back of my mind. Not when we were talking, not when we were laughing, but afterward. When I got home, when I looked at my phone and wondered what my friends would say if I showed them her picture. I don't feel weird with you, I finally said. I feel weird about other people feeling weird about you. Mira nodded slowly. That's the part that wears you down. Later that week, I went out for drinks with my friend Cam. He's known me since college. Funny guy, loyal. No filter. Somewhere between the second and third beer, I let it slip. I've been seeing someone, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, what's she like? She's smart, confident, gorgeous. Sound promising. What does she do? Finance stuff. Works remote. She's a little older. Cam leaned back, grinning. How much older? I hesitated. 17 years. His face froze for a second. Then what? Like a hot boss or something? Not my boss. Just someone I met. You serious about her? I don't know yet, but it's not casual. Cam swirled his drink, thinking that's wild, man. Like she's old enough to be your mom. I looked at him. She's not. I know. I'm not judging. It's just weird. You want to be the guy showing up to parties with a woman people think is your aunt. I didn't answer because deep down that was the voice in my own head sometimes. The one I hated. I left early that night. Didn't sleep well. Kept going over the conversation with Mira, with Cam, with myself. The next day, I texted her, "You free later?" She replied almost instantly. Always. We met at her place that evening. She opened the door in sweatpants, holding a glass of white wine. Her hair was up. No muck-up. Still the most grounded person I knew. She noticed my expression before I said a word. Bad day? She asked. No, just a weird one. She stepped aside to let me in. Cam, she guessed. Yeah. She poured me a drink, then sat beside me on the couch. You don't have to explain anything, she said. I've been here before. I turned toward her. I don't want to be the guy who hides you, and I definitely don't want you to feel like a secret. She placed a hand on my knee. I don't, but you're allowed to take your time figuring this out. I looked at her, not at the age, not at the lines around her eyes, not at the difference between us, just at her. I'm not figuring out if I like you, I said. I already do. I'm figuring out if I'm brave enough to deal with everyone else. She smiled softly. That's fair. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat close. Quiet. Comfortable. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It had been 4 days since we saw each other. No fights, no dramatic fallout, just space. She hadn't texted. I hadn't either. Maybe we were both testing something ourselves. Each other, or just how long we could hold out before breaking the silence. I kept checking my phone like it owed me answers. Then I said, screw it. It was Saturday evening. The sun was already setting when I pulled up in front of her house. She lived in a quiet neighborhood. Neat lawns, one-car garages, wine chimes, the kind of place where neighbors wave even if they don't know you. Her porch light was on. I stood there for a few seconds, hand halfway to the door hard in my throat. Then I knocked. A pause. Then the door creaked open, and there she was. Mirror. No makeup. Hair messy like she hadn't bothered with it all day. Oversized sweatshirt, leggings barefoot. She looked tired. Not the kind you fix with a nap, but the kind that sits in your chest for days. Hey, I said. She didn't smile. Not right away. Just opened the door wider and stepped aside. I walked in. Her living room smelled like vanilla and something faintly floral. A candle burned on the coffee table. A half-finished glass of wine sat beside it. Her laptop was open but asleep. She didn't speak for a while. Neither did I. Finally, she sat on the floor near the big window, legs crossed, arms resting loosely in her lap. I stayed standing, unsure whether to sit next to her or just leave. "You mad?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, just tired of me." "No," she said. Then, after a pause, a feeling like I have to defend this before it's even real. That hit harder than I expected. I sat down across from her, the hardwood cold through my jeans. "I wasn't hiding you," I said. "At least I wasn't trying to." "I know," she said, "but I've done this before, Jace. I've lived in a world where people whisper about women who break the mold, especially women my age. It's exhausting. I don't want to be your experiment." "You're not." "I want to believe that," she said, staring out the window. I leaned forward. "You know what I'm tired of?" She looked at me. "I'm tired of making decisions based on what people might think. I'm tired of second-guessing something that feels good because of an imaginary committee of strangers." Her lips parted like she wanted to interrupt, but she didn't. "I'm not afraid of your age, Mara," I said. "I'm afraid of screwing this up because I let other people shape how I feel." She breathed and slowly exhaled. "I don't care what Kim thinks, or your friend Amy, or the barista who sees us twice a week and probably wonders if I'm your son." That made her crack a smile, a small one, but it was there. I didn't expect to like you this much," I said. "And now I do. And it's messy, and I don't have a playbook for this." Mara tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You think I do?" I shrugged. "You fake it better." She smiled again, then looked down. "You know what scares me?" "What?" "That you'll wake up one day and think this was just a phase, that you'll want someone who can give you kids or meet your parents without explaining why I graduated high school while you were still in diapers." I reached for her hand. "Then let's not think about kids or timelines or what we were doing in 1999. I said, "Let's just think about this. This right now, you, me, this room, the candle that's making me kind of hungry for cookies. Everything else can wait." She laughed, soft but real. "You're an idiot." "Certified." We sat like that for a while, cross-legged, holding hands, saying nothing important but meaning everything. Later, she rested her head on my shoulder. I smelled her shampoo, that familiar scent I hadn't realized I missed until just now. "You sure?" she asked quietly. "No," I said, "but I want to find out." She nodded against me. "I'm too old to fall for babies," she whispered. I looked down at her. "Then let's be a definitely." It wasn't the kind of night that ends with a kiss and fireworks. It was quieter than that, gentler, like something was settling into place. We didn't label anything. We didn't talk about the future. We just sat there on the floor, holding on, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. It had been 3 months since that night on the floor. 3 months of quiet mornings, late-night calls, spontaneous lunches, and a kind of calm I hadn't known I needed. 3 months of not hiding, of letting it all be real. Mira and I had found a rhythm. Nothing dramatic, no sudden moves. We weren't planning weddings. We weren't making lists of baby names. We were just showing up for each other. And for us, that was enough. But this was the weekend everything would be tested, at least in my mind. Cam was getting married. Backyard ceremony. Nothing fancy, but everyone from college was coming. The kind of crowd that remembered me when I still wore cargo shorts and thought frozen pizza was a personality. Mira hadn't said much about the invitation. She just asked, "Do you want me there?" And I did. God, I did. But that voice in my head, the one that used to whisper, "What will people think?" It hadn't completely disappeared. It had just gotten quieter until the day of the wedding. We were getting ready at her place. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a silver necklace. Black dress, simple but elegant, hair down in soft waves. I was behind her half, tying a crooked tie. She turned, caught me looking. "Second thought?" she asked softly. "Only about this tie," I said, giving her a smile. "You," she paused. "Not about us," I nodded then carefully. "But about the looks, the whispers." Mira stepped toward me, and fixed a knot on my tie without a word. Her fingers were gentle practiced. I could take a look. She said, "A whisper won't break me." We drove to the wedding in near silence, but it wasn't awkward, just still. When we arrived, Cam's mom was the first to greet us. Then some old classmates. Everyone smiled politely. No one said anything weird, but you could feel it, the math being done in their heads. You could see the questions behind their eyes. Mira handled it like a pro. She asked about people's jobs, complimented the decor, laughed at the right moments. She never clung to me, but she never pulled away either. She was just there, present, real. Halfway through the night, I caught Cam watching us from across the yard. He raised his drink and gave me a small nod. Not approval, not judgment, just acknowledgement. That meant something. Later, when the dancing started, Mira stayed seated. She watched the crowd with a distant smile, fingers wrapped around a glass of water. I came over, sat beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. I think so." We were quiet for a bit. Then she turned to me. "You don't have to explain us to anyone," she said. "Not tonight. Not ever." I looked at her, really looked at her. She had lines around her eyes that I hadn't noticed 3 months ago. Not because they weren't there, but because I hadn't been paying attention. Now I saw them, and I loved them. Every little detail that made her her. I took her hand. "I'm not explaining anything. I'm just living it." Her eyes softened. "You sure?" I smiled. "I am now." She squeezed my hand. On the drive home, we didn't talk much. Her head rested against the window, eyes half closed. She looked peaceful. The road stretched out ahead, empty and quiet. When we got back to her house, she kicked off her shoes and dropped her purse by the door. I followed her inside, feeling like the night had settled something in both of us. I stood in her kitchen watching her pour a glass of water. Something about it, the normally, the simplicity, felt heavier than usual. "You ever think about what this is?" I asked. She turned. "What do you mean, this us?" "I don't think I ever asked you." She leaned against the counter. "No, you didn't." And she took a breath. "I think it's something I didn't expect. Something I didn't think I needed, but now I can't imagine not having it." I nodded slowly. "Same." She came closer, stood in front of me, looked up. "Do you want to label it now?" "No," I said, "but I want to keep it," she smiled. "Then just stay." And I did. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed. And the next night. And the one after that. A few weeks later, I moved in. Not because it was convenient, not because we needed to prove anything, but because waking up next to her felt more like home than any apartment I'd ever paid rent for. We didn't tell everyone, but we didn't hide it either. We went to restaurants in town. We sat together at the park. We lived like we had nothing to prove. Her friends adjusted. Mine too. Some took longer than others. A few never fully got it. That was fine. We weren't living for them. Mira never pretended to be younger. And I never pretended to be older. We just met where we were. Two people, different numbers, same page. That was enough. That's still enough.